Wait, I think
Oh, okay.
there we
You're
are.
in the right place. Okay. Uh, okay. And people can see both of us. All right. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? Okay. And the redirect happened. Okay. I did not break Madeline's playlist.
All right.
This was going to be that was going to be a concern. I want to know. Apparently, we are streaming in 720p though, which is annoying, but hopefully we can make things big enough that people can see.
Seem to be a little unreliable in quality, but we'll just have to
Yeah.
live with that. Um, is the relative volume good for everyone?
Okay. Um, and Twitch is not working for some reason, so that's fine. It's less moderation headaches for me to worry about.
Mhm.
Uh, add as moderator. Madeline, I turned you into a moderator since I'm probably going to have more people than I usually have. Okay, let's go. So I'm actually going to open a fresh document. I do have something prepared, but we can get to that later.
Mhm.
So I just want to. I didn't want to open that. So my name is George Corley. If people are tuning into me for the first time, I am a conlanger. I do weekly live streams at this time, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central Time, where I am building languages for Dungeons and Dragons. I've finished my version of Draconic. I'm working on my version of Sylvan, which is a much bigger project than I expected. Um, and then and also I have a monthly ish podcast called Conlangery that's on this channel. That's where the channel name comes from. And I've been doing some like conlanging tip videos. But today I'm working with Nikolai of Worldbuilding Pasta. And do you want to introduce yourself, Nikolai?
Yeah, so I make the Worldbuilding Pasta blog, and I've just come onto YouTube. I have like one video so far. And I mostly focus on things like world building geology and star systems and climate and so on, but I know very little about conlanguing, so I'm here to learn today.
Yeah. How much do you know about linguistics in general, like real world linguistics?
Um, I mean, I've heard bits and pieces. I wouldn't say I've ever like really formally looked into stuff, but I've sort of been around some linguistic spaces, so I've kind of picked up a bit just by osmosis, I suppose.
Uh huh.
Um, it's sort of like I'm at the stage where I think I know like a little more than the person on the street, but I don't know enough to really know how much I don't know, I suppose.
That's going to be too small for people to see. So I'm going to zoom in as much as I possibly. Okay. Well,
It's better.
that's great. Hopefully you won't need to know a ton about linguistics,
Mhm.
but we're yes, Nemo. I'm making 5 languages of trench coat. My mistake for having to trying to do like a whole diversification and then coinization thing. This time, from what I understood, Nikolai, your
Mhm.
starting point was going to be um, sort of you wanted a general sort of West romance, almost like a Koine or a mixed language
Yeah.
together.
I
And then
think
later on, there's going to be alien influences involved. Is that
yes.
right?
So the sort of idea is it's for a sort of writing project I'm doing, and I wanted like names for people and places that would be like recognizably having that flavor of Western Romance languages, so you can kind of get a sense that that's maybe where they came from, but not necessarily you could pin down to like, oh, it's just space Spanish. But and then I figured just throw in some alien influence for a bit of spice on the end there.
Okay. That's okay. We can work for that with that. So you do
Mhm.
want it to be recognizably romance. My
Yeah.
thinking was that, and we'll get to that in a little bit, that we would start with sort of a compromise language. And I'll get
Mhm.
to or a koine. Koine, if you're familiar with the term Koine Greek,
Uh,
koineization is like a broader process where different dialects merge, like come in contact, and they form a compromise between them.
mhm.
So we could imagine that somewhere in the initial state, where does this take place? Is this on another planet or what?
Yes,
Okay.
it's the little map you put in your stream thumbnail. That's the
Yeah.
sort of other planet.
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking, is that your initial population arrived there from various countries in Iberia and France,
Mhm.
various places in Iberia and France, and they formed a kind of a koine. Now, koine, usually it's dialect. The difference between language and dialect is kind of fuzzy, um, but Romance languages are fairly similar. It's a little bit difficult because there is a pretty sharp dividing line between like French and the Iberian languages. And I don't know enough about Occitan to know like what side of that line that goes on, but it's probably
Mhm.
more Frenchy. Um, but we can work with it. We can work with it. So like, and my initial idea for this, first you were saying like you wanted like more future Spanish, and I actually did some work, and I built in Lexergy a deromanizer that would turn Spanish into IPA, which is pretty easy because it's a very shallow orthography.
Mhm.
Um, and that's up as a freebie on my Patreon, by the way. If anybody wants to go there, because maybe we're not doing future Spanish, as I realized talking to Nikolai, but maybe you want to, and you can go look at it. There's a couple of bugs, couple of things to look at, but just read the comments at the top. Alien influence. Where's Logan? I don't think we're going to do Logan level alien influence, Jake. Nikolai, you're not going to have radically different physiology and vocal abilities, right?
No, no, I didn't want to overcomplicate things even more with that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's I think the idea today is like the language of humans who have been like around aliens rather than necessarily having to worry too much about what's the like ancestral alien language.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so that's what we're thinking as the first step. Now, I asked you beforehand to be ready to give me
Mhm.
like a rundown of historical events up to this point, so that we can have a general like idea of the when we do some historical conlanging, the best way to do it, you can't just like say, oh, every 100 years you're going to have this many changes, because languages do not change at a constant rate. It's not, there's no like agreed upon thing. People tried to figure that out among linguists, it doesn't work. But the best thing to do is just to handle it in stages, just like we divide up real languages. You know, if you research English, you're going to talk about like there's Old English, then there's Middle English, then there's Early Modern English, then there's the English we speak now. Now, we know that there's continuous variation through that timeline. Okay, that there is no point where you actually crossed over from Old English to Middle English. But for a conlanger, it's just easier to do that. Like, okay, I'm going to make my proto language, and then we're going to have a stage that's this older form of the language. We'll do all the sound changes for that, and then the modern form will do all the sound changes for that. So I'm just going to I just want you to help me run down historical events to figure out where those points are.
Okay. So I think for this place, there's sort of three or four major events we can sort of work around. So we figure people might have first come to this planet, I'm going to say roughly like maybe 2 or 3 thousand years ago. You like first have people showing up, and then maybe you might have a few waves coming after that.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
then we might say,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then we might say, call it like 2-ish thousand years ago, the first immigrants from this sort of alien society might start to show up, and they're going to at first sort of inhabit slightly different regions of the planet for where the main human populations are, so they might not like immediately have a lot of mixing. And then
Yeah. Okay.
around, let's say, 1000 years ago, we have essentially a global nuclear war. Most of the population is wiped out, and then uh, the remainder of sort of both populations sort of end up, the survivors retreat into the sort of highland areas, and
Mhm.
there's sort of a smaller population living there for a while. And then over the next several hundred years, they'll maybe sort of move back out and recolonize the rest of the planet. And you might have maybe different populations with slightly different amounts of inter contact and intermixing between the two different species, but don't necessarily have to worry too much about that.
Okay. Um Now, in the modern form, this is like the modern form is after people have spread out.
Yes.
Um some things that pop out to me. Now, realistically, when we have this nuclear war 1,000 years ago and everybody scatters to the hills, that makes me think that there's going to be a lot of communication cut off. And in a realistic scenario, this is where the language would fracture into hundreds of different languages. But we probably are not going to have time. You're
Yeah.
never going to have time to do all of that detail.
I
So,
mean, I think we can sort of, the way the planet's geography works is there's kind of one big plateau that you figure like most of them will move into. So you might still
okay.
have one major population
Okay.
center.
Then I think then probably what you want to do, depending on how you want your story, if you want your story set on that major plateau, then we focus just on that one.
Mhm.
And then there can be like incidental things where we not even build out a dialect, but we can just like throw in an irregular word and say, oh, this actually came from this isolated population over in this other area that happened to be there and stuff and add some realism that way. A good real world analog is there are a few words in like Spanish where that seem to be throwbacks to old Iberian languages that no longer exist, right?
Mhm.
That kind of thing happens all the time. There are also things in English where one dialect borrowed from another dialect, and it's not obvious to most speakers where that comes from. But thinking about this now, 2 to 3,000 years is a long time in language change.
Yeah.
Um, but languages don't change at a constant rate, and there are mitigating factors to that potentially,
Hmm.
because I think you have said that there are immortals, like
Yeah.
high status immortals, or at least people who live for thousands of years.
Yeah, there's a
So
sort of small upper class of immortals, and then the rest of the population is
yeah, so
more or less.
that might be, obviously we have no precedent for that. We don't know how that would actually affect language. However, uh, knowing that that can be a conservative pressure, and we can sort of fudge things in a way that will keep this recognizable as a Romance language.
Mhm.
And I mean, Latin is 2,000 years ago, and modern Romance languages are still noticeably derived from it. So it's not necessarily a big deal, but it's something to keep in mind. So I'm thinking we have like these different stages that are like clearly like 1,000 years apart,
Mhm.
which is very like a very good place to have stages. I'm thinking actually that these three events can be, and we'll have a fourth stage. So let me actually like turn this into a, can I did this as bullet points,
Mhm.
and I want to turn it into a table.
I think you should.
Uh, uh, I only want two columns. Let me see if this. Oh my gosh, what happened there?
I think I did it by word.
Yeah, it did it by word. Okay, let's um let's do it this way.
Convert. Wait, do you have convert text to tape?
Actually, I want to keep these bullet points, but let's actually just make a new table. So let's go with this. So we're going to go with 3K years ago, 2K years ago, and 1K years ago. Here's me using like stuff they use in like biology, and
Mhm.
event stage, and so arrival, and this will be the Western Romance Koine, and then we'll have insert rows below. Oh, I did a rows below above. That's fine. Now, and then we have first contact, minor alien influence, and then nuclear conflict. Um, and then let's just merge these cells. This is there's well, yeah. So this gives us like this will be the like the initial state. This will be like our proto language, and then we have like three stages. That's pretty manageable. Um, and then we're aliens, lots of change. When you have a big social upheaval, that's a
Yeah.
big place for a lot of language change,
Mhm.
because like the existing power structures break down. Uh, People become much more innovative, and like also education, which is keeping things conservative, sort of fails, right?
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
It is. Everybody, people in chat are joking that
Yeah.
the Immortals are the Académie Française. Some of them might be Real Academia Española. Who knows?
They got bullied off of Earth and they
Yeah.
settled here.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, no, I don't think it's the Académie Française because they would never allow the level of like mixing that happens
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Now, okay. So with that done, let me pull up what I had built beforehand because that informs where we start. Now, I will go through this. I will explain this. Um, Actually, I need to like zoom out a little bit because I need this chart to be entirely on the page. So I this is consonants, and what I did, he said, okay, general like Western Romance feel. So I looked up phoneme inventories for Spanish, Portuguese, French, Catalan, Occitan, and is it Asturian? I think it's Asturian there. And I just sort of mapped out what they share phonologically. Okay,
Should we be seeing a different screen now?
you should be, and you are not because I did not change my screen share. There we go. Okay,
There we
so
go.
there we go. So let's go through it. So the green ones are ones that are in all of them. Blue is like one's missing or one has like a question, like it's like dialectal. It's not as common. Um, Purple is like two or three have it, and then the orange is like only one or it's like one and then a question mark one. So let's go through. All of them have M, N, and the palatal nasal nya, right? That's in Spanish. It's represented by the ñ, the N with the tilde. In French, that's I believe a GN. Portuguese NH, but they're all ñ, right? PTK. Those are almost universal among human languages, so it's expected. Um, we'll talk a little bit about the voiced stops because it's a little complicated because of Spanish. But then we have affricates. A lot of them have the ch, but not all of them. We have just a few have the t and z and the j. Um, Everybody's got an F. Everybody's got an S. A lot of people have the sh. Only Spanish and some dialects of Catalan have the h, the velar fricative, and we'll talk a little bit about how to adapt to that. Also, only Catalan has an H. Like most Western Romance languages have completely lost H and never like re-evolved it. So we'll just leave that. We will just delete that. Um, then we go to voice fricatives. Now, some of them have a phonemic voice fricatives, v, z, and j, right? French has the j there, right? Um, Spanish, uh, there's Occitan has a v and a the apparently, and Spanish you have the question mark. The thing is, also this g. The thing about Spanish is there's sort of an analysis thing to consider because um, everybody knows about the like famous thing in Spanish where b, d, g become v, the, and the between vowels or after a vowel, just in lots of places, right?
Yeah.
Um, and actually, a lot of linguists will actually analyze this, the v, the, and the, as the actual phoneme, and then b, d, g as allophones. An allophone is like a variant of a phoneme that's contextual. So, like they'll say, "Oh, it's at after a consonant, you'll get the b, d, g," and then but usually it's v, d, g. We're not going to be too concerned about this. We're just going to say, we're going to think about, okay, most of these languages do have the b, d, g, even though, like, we could put a question mark on Spanish because we don't know which exactly is the phoneme, but we can probably regularize that to the b, d, g. But then we have the thing of, okay, this V, Spanish speakers will sort of perceive it as the same as a b, right? So we'll think about that as we go. Um, the theta is pretty much an Iberian, like something that happens just in Spain, and it's not consistent among Spanish dialects. It exists in Asturian, can exist in Catalan, but I think we can lose this because it's theta is kind of an unstable sound. That's the voiceless th in English, right? Apparently, we are on Twitch because I'm getting follows. Um, I don't know what's going on.
All right.
Yeah, but we're probably going to lose theta, definitely lose h. We'll talk about x in the ch in a minute. The other thing is, okay, this now we have glides, y and w. You'll notice I didn't put that in Spanish. Um, Spanish is weird about this. This is another analysis issue because, like, okay, if you as an English speaker know the word puede, you probably think that this is like a W sound, right? Like you probably hear it as like pue. I can there the this represents a voice the voice th sound, which d turns into, right? But like linguists will often say that this isn't actually a W. What you have is a diphthong of U and E, and the U becomes non-syllabic, and it's what they call a rising diphthong, which just means that the main vowel of the diphthong is the second vowel instead of the first vowel. But a lot of these others have these glides, and also this phoneme, this yeah, right? Particularly in Spain, it's often realized as the yeah. So I think we can safely just have this here and just assume that everybody will pronounce it in some way. The W also, just sort of by analogy, people will just translate that weird diphthong into the W phonologically. And then this only exists in French and Occitan, the yeah. This is like a yeah, like an English Y sound, except you round your lips. Okay. I don't know. Do you speak French?
Not really, no.
Do you speak Mandarin Chinese at all?
No.
Okay. Well, this exists in French. It also exists in Mandarin Chinese, but yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This maybe we can lose it, maybe we can keep it. We'll have to think about that. And then the liquids, okay, L, everybody's going to have an L. This lambda, I think we're kind of safe with keeping it. French doesn't have it. And Spanish, some dialects preserve it, but most do not. There was a change where this just became this, which is also this. The ya sound became just a ya in Spanish. or a je. Um, the R's. So a tap R is probably safe, but it depends on. The thing is, we have two particularly difficult R sounds. We have the alveolar trill in a lot of these languages, ra, right? And then in
The one I've never
French,
been able to do.
yeah, well, and then in French and Portuguese, we have the uvular trill, ra. Well, uvular. Sometimes it's a trill, ra. Sometimes it's a fricative, ra. I put it in the fricatives because that's where most people put it. Ra. It's the uvular. The thing is, even though like these two are really far apart on the chart, there's this thing about the class of sounds we call rhotics where people just tend to like spell them with R and treat them kind of the same. So we kind of have a choice. Do we can do one of three things. We can collapse them all to a tap. That's possible. So, like, if we happen to use the Spanish word perro for dog and the perro for but, the conjunction but, those would end up sounding the same, right? Or we could say, like, choose one of these, either the ra or the ra. And in any case, it doesn't have to be in the final. Okay, we're just talking about the initial state. Um, we could also say that there's just variation among speakers. Some people have the r vowel, some people have just a tap, some people have the trill. R. Um, so, how does that feel to you? Like, which way would you want to go with that?
Okay. I'm tempted to drop the trills because I can't pronounce them, but I think it would be sad to lose the
Okay.
Spanish trill entirely. So maybe we can keep it as a somewhat of a dialectal thing, but
Yeah, we could keep it like as a dialectal thing. Another thing is like as we go into sound changes, there are already a lot of things happening with this sound in
mhm,
Spanish dialects. So we could do fun things. Some Spanish dialects it gets devoiced, so it becomes ra. Some of them it does come more like a fricative or an approximate. It depends on how keen you are to keep it. But we can think about that.
mhm,
Another thing that is kind of throws a wrench in things, but I think we can resolve is this huh. This basically only occurs in Spanish
mhm.
as a result of a sound change that just happened in Spanish and not other places. So having this will make you people feel like it's in Spanish. I I take that back. I didn't put Galician on here, but Galician has it in more places than Castilian Spanish does. But still, it's a very, very Iberian thing and
Mhm.
very recognizable. And the thing is, like, where do you adapt it to? Because nobody else has H except maybe some Catalan speakers. We could adapt it to K, but it doesn't feel right to me. So my thinking is that this is a modern population with modern education. They know that this h is standardly spelled is, is in the standard spelled with this J, with a J.
Mhm.
Let me switch my keyboard so I can actually type, right? And they also know that one of the sources is is something that became this is very informal. I'm not saying it's something that becomes like a je. Um, if I can remember the right key combination in other languages. So French je, right?
Mhm.
Portuguese has je, like the name Jesus. Uh, um, Jesus. Can I can I get this to work? Why am I not? Yeah, Jesus in Spanish is pronounced Jesus in Portuguese. So maybe they just like as a spelling pronunciation turn most of the ch into sh into a zh. They
Yeah.
might keep it or adapt it to a k in some like exceptional circumstances. Like I'm thinking like if the word reloj, uh, spell it reloj, came into this final language, maybe they would pronounce that as reloj instead of reloj, just because it's like a weird word.
Yeah.
But we'd have to think about that.
Hmm.
But like this can be sort of irregular, but I think probably we will adapt it. So this is where I was going. Now you said you probably want to keep the trill ra,
Yeah.
um, and then but not have the uvular. We're not having
Yeah. We can lose it, simplify it a little.
yeah. And we can say that maybe there's some speakers that have a uvular, and maybe on the planet there will be some dialects that have the uvular or reinvented the uvular. We'll see. Um,
Hmm.
it also depends on like what the alien influences are and all of that. So this is what I have. The other question I have is so lots of people have this Spanish. The ch is kind of this, but the thing is, these are very similar,
Hmm.
and I think they're going to be merging a lot. Um, so my question to you on this one is, um, do we keep the do you want ch to win out or sh to win out, or find a way to keep both of them?
Um, I think we should. I think we'll lean towards sh. I think
Okay.
is sort of.
Okay, so if we keep the sh and lose cha, that
Hmm.
means probably these affricates will just all become fricatives. Like the t becomes z becomes yeah, t becomes z becomes z, right? And
Right.
then we'd have um ch becomes sh, j becomes zh, and then we can just not have affricates in this initial stage. We may
Hmm.
redevelop them later. Okay, always always consider that this is 3,000 years in the past that we're talking about. As we move forward, this might start looking a bit different. Okay.
Okay.
um the only other thing is I talked to you about Spanish speakers are going to like feel like this is a B, but there are plenty of languages that do have just a phonemic V. So the question is, do we want to keep the V or not?
I like the V personally.
Okay, we can keep the V. And
Maybe.
I'm thinking also we can keep the palatal L, the y sound, because there's enough languages that have it. And like learned, like educated Spanish speakers will understand that like this double L, even if their own dialect pronounces this as a ya or a ya, they know that historically it was a ya, and there's some dialects that have the ya. And then it would be like the only language that doesn't have it would be like French. So that I think that works out. Um, Kairos is saying, "Oh my God, is this Spanish?" Well, here's the thing: it's gonna sound very Spanish, and that's just partly just because like Spanish is pretty close to the lowest common denominator among Western Romance. Um, in fact, um, I we haven't talked about vowels. But I didn't actually work up all of this in the vowel systems because I think that the best situation for the vowels, and we can just, I can just whip up this table very quickly. Oh, I want another column. Insert. To start out with, we'd have high, mid, low, front, central, back. The thing is, like, you go to French, it's got a ton of vowels. You go to Spanish, it's got very few vowels. But probably the easiest thing to do would be to reduce this down to the standard 5 vowels, which is what Spanish has. This is going to end up sounding very Spanish. But at the same time, this is kind of the lowest common denominator, and it's going to be relatively easy to collapse all of the vowel distinctions in the other ones into this. Like, you got the U vowel. French has the U vowel. That's probably going to just become a U. Okay. It gets there more in vocabulary. Fewer Arabic loanwords where Spanish is divergent and some, but yeah, we're not talking about Italian because Nikolai specifically said Western Romance. Um, David said, "Add a schwa." I think at the Koine stage, probably no schwa, at least no phonemic schwa, but we can have a lot of schwa reduction happening because French has like schwa reduction, right? Or at least it has like schwas that are involved in liaison, at least. So this is like just the phoneme inventory. No, Jake said there's a schwa. No, David would say kill all schwas. Did I actually misspeak there? You are the David of Elhab. Yes, Miles has all the crazy ideas. By the way, let's have a booba. They are another conlanging stream you can watch.
Think they'll be in the. They were in the previous stream.
They're in several streams.
Or Jake was in.
I would love to be in more streams next year. Maybe because all my daughters will be in school then. Maybe I will be able to have time for that, but we'll see. So that's my thinking for the initial state of the phoneme inventory. Some other considerations, like phonotactically, Spanish has the thing where you can't have an initial SC cluster, so it becomes ESC. Like, instead of studio, you have estudio, which I think is pretty broadly shared. French also deletes the S, if I'm not mistaken, just because French likes to delete codas anyway. And I think Portuguese also has a similar thing, so we can probably keep that. But that's like I think the biggest thing is going to be like adaptations. One thing I did think about was adapting liaison. Am I spelling that right? I don't speak French, so but ah um throw me a French noun that begins with uh um a French noun that masculine noun that begins with a consonant. What
Uh,
here? So like me me shas like is that how you would spell my cats? I'm not sure,
I think so.
but uh, I don't know. But we have this thing where consonants get deleted um, before a consonant. Misha
Hmm.
versus mes amis, the s is pronounced there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, chien. Yeah, I was thinking about chien, mi chien versus is it mes or mes? Mes chien, mes chien or mes amis, right? I
Hmm.
was looking at Spanish borrowings of French terms, and they tend to leave that final consonant off. But if you have the vowel liaison, sometimes they do add. Yes, I know Spanish better than French, Jake. So that's why I had that. Like if you have the like bon, if this is before a vowel, it's bon. If it's before a consonant, I believe that it's bona. Um, but and so the Spanish, like the Spanish version of that, is bona, right? But when they borrow French words, sometimes they will also add that to it. I think just for euphony. So we kind of can have that. It's probably going to be a case of we think of each word on a case by case basis and think of what the source
Hmm.
is and what the adaptation is to our sort of pan Western romance that's probably going to look a little bit like Spanish, a little bit like interlingua.
Hmm.
Um, and then grammar. Now, this is a naming language. That doesn't mean we're not doing any grammar. And it will behoove us to know a few things about what the development of the grammar is. First of all, for current Romance languages, we have broadly speaking, we have two. I'm going to say noun classes, masculine and feminine. I think all of the mainline ones are just masculine and feminine. There is a dialect of Asturian that is redeveloping a neuter specifically for mass nouns, but we don't need to worry about that too much. Um, so there's a political um, angle also to what you want to do with that. Is like in this early stage, the maybe we don't want to worry too much about it at this point though, because there's totally within 3,000 years there's a possibility of it just completely dying out.
Hmm.
There's also a cases where you could completely redevelop an entirely new noun class system that's like totally different categories even. And there's lots of different ways in between, but it's something we want to keep in the back of our mind. We have
Yeah.
number marking on nouns, singular and plural. So we probably are going to keep that. and I think the like majority have an S or ES um, ending. I don't want a euro symbol um, for the plural. That can get lost. There are already processes in Spanish where S turns into an H sound and then even getting deleted. So it's really likely that the plural could get lost at some point in this process. Um, Whether it does get lost or not, or whether like a new plural real evolves, or we get more, or even we get like more fun things like a dual and everything developing, that's kind of up to you. It's also going to depend a little bit on what the features of the alien language are, because that could influence it. Um, and that's the main thing. Uh, we do know syntactically we have mostly prepositions. We don't have any case marking at time zero because, as far as I understand, none of these languages have any case marking. So nouns are pretty simple, actually. Um, Even taking into account like the fact that you have gender agreement, it's a very simple noun class system overall. It's not it's not like uh, and and number marking is just singular and plural. With agreement on adjectives, we do need to, yeah. One thing we want to do is, I do believe that some of these languages have some agreement marking on the prepositions, while others just have it on pronouns and adjectives. Pronouns, adjectives, and determiners. Determiners is a broad category. Um, it's a broad category that's the so the demonstratives like that, this, um, those, also the articles, which all have full agreement are marking in these languages. So it will probably end up with uh, either el or le for masculine. Like we're probably going to have like le, la, los, las, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we'll probably have uno, una, unos, unas. I know that's exactly what Spanish has, but it's probably a pretty good compromise. We could make it une, or we could have a situation where like we develop a third gender and we have une taking that slot, right?
Yeah.
Because that's something that LGBT movements in Spanish are doing. So we can think about that. Um, this is this is this is just a draft. We can think
Yeah.
more about that later, um, and we don't need to worry too much about that. Uh, we have prepositions. Um, Verbs can turn into nouns through like the infinitive or the participles. Um, so like, and that's important historically. The infinitive, not so much, but you see a lot of Spanish place names that have gotten a participle. I'm thinking mostly in the North American context. Florida, Florida, flowery, this flowered, right? Colorado. Nevada. Now, some of those is like they had a noun and they had the participle as a modifier. So Nevada, I think, is probably from Sierra Nevada, right? Um, and Colorado would have been from Rio Colorado, right? Um, the shorter form. So yeah, that's actually so one thing I'm thinking about is have the participle end in "ao" rather than "ado." We'd have the "ado" to "ao." That happens in Portuguese. It also happens in Spanish in informal dialects, right? I don't know what's the participle ending in French. Um, right. What are the participle endings in French? Because Spanish has ado, ido, um, ado, and ido, depending on your theme vowel. What's Let me. I can just look that up.
French participles.
Okay.
Um,
All? What's this all?
yeah, I'm seeing A and T.
That's for the okay. I'm taking the that's connected to the ando. That's the present participle. I was thinking the past participle though. Let me see. That's also something to think about. Uh, uh, um, participe passé. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. So French has like eh, which I believe the acute accent means it's pronounced as an eh rather than right? Ow. Uh comprao. Yeah, we can do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, so the thing is Kairos. Okay, you say this is that is vulgar and never written. Things that are not written sometimes end up written later. That's the nature of language change. So we do want to think about some of those like dialectal variations that may be lower class because there's still a case. Um, okay. We have a lot of ideas happening in the chat. I'm just going to catch up with the chat for a second. What? Because
Okay.
Jake, they mentioned the Galician. Sometimes the ch remained sh. So that's actually something to keep in mind. So this is what people will think, but actually, this ch in reality came from uh, both the um, let me see, it came from both je and sh. Okay, they both merged to ch, and then a spelling reform decided, okay, we're going to spell all of these as the J. They're all going to be jota. But which um, so, but I'm going to say that this is what most people are going to think, and they're going to if a Spanish word with the ch comes in, it's very likely to be adapted as a je not so much as a sh. Um, unless unless there's a really good reason, like there's some words, some indigenous words where it's spelled with an X, and in the indigenous languages from the Americas, the like in axolotl, um, axolotl. In Spanish, I think it actually is spelled ajolote, but it comes from axolot, axolotl in Nahuatl. And some people might, for some reason, decide to put the sh in there for that reason, if they happen to know that's the origin. Uh, more likely things for that would be the like place names like Mexico and Oaxaca, where you retain that X where it was historically a sh. Um, but I don't know if we're even ever going to like mention Mexico here because we're on a different planet. Maybe there will be like something called something like Nuevo Mexico, right? End up being like Novo Mexico or something like that, right? Um, but these are things to think about, and then lots of derivational affixes. Um, One thing about Romance languages is they're not so big on compounds, but they like lots of derivational affixes as sort of a carryover from Latin. That said, I want to work in my very favorite um, compounding strategy comes from Spanish. And if I will have some input, I would like it to survive the 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 verb incorporation compounds. I don't know how broad that is in Western Romance, though, but we'd have to say. But words like espantapájaros,
Oh, yeah.
rascacielos, um, what cumpleaños.
Yeah, no, I like that too.
Yeah, I really love that strategy, and if we can find a way to keep it, I would like to have it reflected in some way, even if we just like have these words historically and it's not no longer productive. But if we can really like have that, it's I misspelled cumpleaños. Okay, um, but if you're not familiar with Spanish, so what you're having is the verb root with the theme vowel. So it looks like the third person singular form of the verb, and then a plural of the noun. Another one, a lot of people will know, chupacabras. Um, and it together it forms a singular noun, right? So espanta means to scare, pájaros means birds. That's a scarecrow. Rasca means to scrape or to tear apart. Cielos, uh, skyscraper. Cumple, to count. Años, years, birthday. Chupa, to suck. Capras, goat, the goat sucker. Um, and it is el chupacabras, not la chupacabras. Um, I I used to think that these always became masculine, but then I talked to a Spanish speaker and he said, "Well, actually, like it kind of depends, and partly it's like chupacabras is masculine because it's a monster." Um,
Yeah,
Eva E is talking about alien Mexico.
yeah.
El
But
México me extraña.
I get what you mean. I do like just how those kinds of words feel on
Yeah,
the.
I really kind of like it. And at the very least, some of these words will like be there. But we'll have to see like
Mhm.
how the language would develop over time. Um, Beyond that, we're not going to worry about grammar. We're not going to worry about higher level sentence structure. We're not going to worry about a whole lot of things unless, like, do you imagine what is your primary purpose for this? Is this for like personal names or geography or what?
It's probably mostly geography. So I want to sort of write a story on this world eventually, and I'm not necessarily going to get too much into like the language they're speaking, but I want to, have people with names and like towns with names and so on that sort
Okay.
of make sense in this language.
So, for place names, you probably do want structure of noun phrases. I believe most of these languages are going to have like adjectives after the noun.
Yeah.
Our initial state's probably going to have adjectives after the noun by default, maybe exceptional cases of it before the noun. Like
Mhm.
Spanish has the restrictiveness distinction there. Um, I don't know. I'd have to do more research to figure out like exactly where that's going to land. Um, the This can change quite a bit though. Um, we have prepositions. However, over the course of 3,000 years, those prepositions may evolve into case marking, and then they might get dropped, and then we might get new prepositions, and we might get new case marking. Depending, I don't think we're going to go that far. We might get to the stage of them like fusing with nouns and becoming case marking, um, depending on what you want. But because we are trying to like assume that this is slower than usual, but we do have a huge social upheaval. Like we have two huge social upheavals in your timeline. So who knows?
Mhm.
Because they're moving to another planet, and then 1,000 years, like 2,000 years later, they have a nuclear war. So there's a lot of um, okay. Quebranta huesos, bearded vulture. Corre Vedila. People are just giving me a lot of the Spanish verb incorporation compounds I've never heard.
As they
Uh,
should.
Irregular verbs go burr. Okay, people are talking about irregular verbs and everything.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
I think we've made a good amount of progress on this. We kind
mhm.
of have nailed down our initial phonology, and um, I can work on some sound changes from there.
Yeah.
Um, Let me switch back to my overall plan document, and we'll talk about. Uh, I don't know why I decided to. Um, and yes, I did misspell Worldbuilding Festival on my thing. Whatever. Um, 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 to, so um, from here to here, we're going to have some sound changes. Um, so insert Uh, let's insert a column here. Initial I's dialect and roughly 1,000 years of normal sound changes. Like I'm just going to say, like things that typically happen in human languages. They're not having outside contact. It's just
Mhm.
they do the initial coinization, and then from there, that dialect maybe it diversifies a little bit. Maybe it's a pretty cohesive copulation, but like you have things that happen in normal human languages, just the general lenition and like nasal assimilation, things like that happening, um, and uh, and slower than usual change because we have immortals, um, or at least like very long lived people. Okay,
Mhm.
um, this will be more normal sound changes. Um, a few alien loan words. Okay, and then major changes. Extensive alien influence. Whereas like here we're just gonna say like, okay, we get some alien loan words, um and maybe a little bit of maybe a little bit of structural change, probably not too much. Whereas here, when I say extensive alien influence, like I think it will start to affect grammar and phonology and stuff in more
Mhm.
significant ways. Um, Another example from Spanish, like a lot of initial F's were lost in Spanish. They became H's and then were lost. And one theory of that behind that is that it was because of Basque contact. Because Basque, I don't think has an F. Um, However, that although that change was not complete, there are still words in Spanish that have initial F, either because they were reborrowed from Latin or their names, or they just never reached those. Um, Richard, you are exactly on time. You're just fine. Do not apologize for being late to the stream because this is here for your entertainment. Um, um, and then here, like I'm saying, the change from here to here to here to here. Okay, so
Yeah.
um, we're going to so here's where like the alien language more significantly influences it. Um, this is also, you told me
Mhm.
that there's something special about this nuclear conflict in terms of the alien language, in that the aliens have a life stage where they become like inert sessile, like
Yeah.
trees basically, um and they do not use language in that like in between stage. That's like
Mhm.
it's a generation of those and then a generation of mobile intelligent creatures,
Yeah.
and that the nuclear conflict happened and those all got lost. So actually,
Yeah. So the idea is it's sort of that like after the conflict, the sort of alien society kind of in a way loses a lot of their own culture in the process, And
Yeah.
in the end, it's sort of like their language doesn't really survive in its original form, but just in the sort of influence it has had on the like common
Okay.
human language.
Okay. So, um, instead of extensive alien influence, um, I'm going to change that influence of alien physiology and psychology. I don't know if
There might be an element of that, yeah.
because what we're going to say here is that they're not going to get more like this the alien language died
Hmm.
at this point. So we're not going to get more influence from the alien language. We're going to have the Lone Lords carry forward.
Hmm.
However, um, any physiological differences of these aliens as they are learning the the human language, this Romance descendant, they may not be able to pronounce all of the sounds.
Hmm.
Um, they may have psychological differences that bias them towards certain grammatical structures, and that is um, uh, so the bulk of the influence from the alien language is going to come in this stage. However, after the bombs go off, since the alien language doesn't exist anymore, maybe it's documented somewhere or
Hmm.
something, um, then it's just going to be the physiological and maybe psychological differences of the aliens that will influence the language. And a major thing about this is that, like, a major driver is of language change is it's spreading to new populations. We don't necessarily want to think about this as like the humans adapting to the aliens, but the aliens adapting the language to themselves, and then some of those features will spread back to the humans. Um, and so that's where we would want to talk about the aliens. I think that rather than jumping into Lexergy and doing all of these sound changes at this point,
Hmm.
that'll be a thing eventually. I think the more interesting thing to talk about will be um, let's let me start a new document. I don't know. I probably should have this all in my own document, but physiology. And do you have a name for the aliens?
Uh, the interim name for now is the Naraki. We'll see if that makes sense with the
Well, I will
phonology.
see. I mean, it's entirely possible.
Hmm.
So let's start with physiology. What are physiological differences that will affect how they pronounce things?
I
Keep in mind. Let me share the new document. Window. Share that.
Mhm.
Um, let's have some notes on like what physiological differences do they have.
All
Um,
right.
that will affect how they pronounce human languages. Um, now, you mentioned that they have stiff cheeks.
Yeah, I think generally the whole they're gonna be pretty similar, like pretty convergently similar, but I think generally like a stiffer cheeks in front of the mouth, but maybe like more going on sort of in the throat.
Okay, more flexible at the throat.
Hmm.
Now, when you say stiff cheeks, how are their lips?
I would say they still have lips. They're kind of still there, but like yeah, the same thing. Generally, the front is like a little stiffer in general.
Okay. Um, and then like anything deeper in the vocal tract, and any just thinking about, are we assuming that they have a larynx the same way that humans do?
Yeah, I think there's sort of an idea I was kind of playing with was that like they have a main vocal tract with the larynx, but they might also have just kind of second secondary openings there which aren't used in most of their speech, but might sort of to some extent play into I don't know, something like playing musical chords, something like I don't know if that would work well for trills or something like that, but that might be an element to throw in there.
Okay, capable of um capable of multiple pitches, I'll say.
Yeah.
Um that this will actually be useful when I'm like when we devise like the very simple basic language, because we do want to have a consistent system for their language for loan
Hmm.
words, but we basically just need the phonology to generate some words.
Hmm.
I don't think we need to do any grammar work. Maybe I will put in like some affixes that I don't even know what they mean, just to have another element that will, um like, from an artistic standpoint, what we want is for these loan words to be identifiable, to where people will look at like that word in that name and say, okay, these words are from the human language. This word looks like it's from the alien language. Um, just like when you are looking at English, you can have a general sense of what words are Germanic and what words are Romance in origin. You won't be 100% accurate if you don't know the etymology, but you can guess it a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, uh, oh, stress became a tonal distinction. Okay. Yeah, we could develop tone. Maybe the Naraki. Jake brings up a good point. We could do something like with Astran, where it developed tonogenesis. One thing we could say is like the conservativeness of our changes may not lead to tonogenesis in the early stages, but then Naraki, with their ability to produce multiple pitches, maybe they are more prone to tonal languages even than humans, which humans, like a lot of human languages, are tonal. It's super common among humans. Um, but maybe rather than like 2/3 of languages having tone, the Naraki, like all of them have tones, and they have tones that we can't even pronounce because they can do these extra harmonics, right?
Yeah.
The Yeah. Um McCain, uh so you're you will launch me off on an academic rant that I don't have time for, but safe to say, I think that most tonal languages have a stress system, if not all of them, because of the nature of what like tone and stress are. It's useful. I think it's more useful to say that a language, whether languages have a stress system, whether languages have a tone system, than to use these artificial categories of stress language and tone language. I don't think that's the case. However, let's not worry too much about that. Saramakan, I have I think Saramakan is covered in one of these books over there. So Jake, I will look that up later as I find time to like develop further. So that's a useful note. Um, why am I not sharing the right thing,
Hmm?
or is oh my you guys are seeing this right?
I'm seeing physiology of the Naraki.
Okay, I think my buffering was way back there, like 30 minutes back for some reason. Okay,
Might
there
just
we
be
go.
mine.
I just want to know that everybody's seeing the right thing.
Yeah.
So, secondary openings in the vocal tract. So, that's useful. So, I'm thinking, um, I don't think that this is going to have much of an impact, but it's something I'll think about.
All right.
Stiffer lips, one thing that this might have is difficulty with rounded vowels, and then difficulty with um, F and V. These are so IPA talk here. F and V. These correspond to um, are correspond to what we call the labiodental fricatives, which is you take your lower lip and put it in contact with your teeth, do f and v. If their lips are less flexible than humans, then they may change those to the bilabial fricatives, which would be f and v. We saw that before. Spanish actually has this uh, as like an alternation with b, right? Ba and va, right? So they may like lean into that, and also this is the F sound of Japanese. This is f, like in that's right.
Mhm.
Um, fugu, or Fuji. Um, and then rounded vowels. So we don't have a lot of the rounded vowels in the initial stage that French and stuff, but we still have like o and u. They may get adapted to um like um ö and maybe they could go in a different way too. Um Juegos, I'm gonna I say Juegos because you literally have a proto-indo-European name with sounds that we don't know what they mean. So I'll do the best I can. Juegos, uh, uh, you have compressed vowels, so it's like e compressed. Okay, I'll think about that. I'll think about that. It's not super important because unless we have like an event where we get vowels fronting and we re-evolve e and then rounding is redundant with backness. So it's probably not going to be a huge deal. Um, People who have been following me know that my Draconic language also doesn't have any rounded vowels because I made the same sort of assumption that they have lips, but they won't do like the same things. Um, they won't be capable of flexing them enough to do rounding. They can't do the ooh thing.
Mhm.
Um, A general idea is that um, that initial flexibility of the lips is a mammalian adaptation for milk feeding, right? So any mammals excluding the monotremes. So I don't, Biblaridian would know the term, but excluding the monotremes, the all other
Is that
mammals
the
have flexible lips for that
placentals?
reason.
No.
What? What?
I was thinking the placentals, but no, you're
No,
including
it's placental
marsupials
and
as well.
marsupial, which belong to a
Uh,
larger group.
Eutherians? I'm not sure.
Therians. Yeah, I'm not sure if Therians is the group that excludes monotremes or if there's some other thing. But
Mhm,
anyway, but like, so we already had more flexible lips than like reptiles, and then they adapted further for
mhm.
language and facial expressions. Um, oh, Eutheria are placentals. Okay,
All
um,
right.
that's
I don't know.
that's neither here nor there. But the this thing, this possible interference with all labial consonants. So this is like almost like an alternative to this. It could be that they just can't do the labiodentals, but it could also be that they can't do any of the PM, FV, or even these F and V that uh, right.
Yeah.
Um, it kind of depends. I kind of assumed that like dragons would be able to seal their mouth shut and they could do all of these things,
Mhm,
but you could do a different direction for these aliens. It kind of depends on like how stiff do you think their lips are and how well, especially for like P,
mhm.
how well do you think they could seal it and build up pressure behind?
I think it could be the sort of thing where they can sort of pick it up. They can manage it for the purpose of like talking human language, but they might have just not really had these in their native language.
Okay, that's a cool idea. So just a bias in their own languages.
Mhm,
So that makes me think that we would take an initial language that has no labials, no rounded vowels, and then later on when they pick up the Romance language, when well, like when the previous generation is died, this language is dead.
mhm,
They pick up the Romance language and they are still able to adapt those labial consonants. And so the human language is going to have those because humans, we do lose P pretty often. Um, but generally we're going to have some labial consonants. So I think that those will still exist in the future human language and they'll adapt them the best they can. And
mhm,
that can be one of your indicators of this is the alien language because there are no P's. Um, and absence, we're probably want to have a something that's a presence and something that's an some things that are present in that are not present, maybe in just in phonotactic structure, in the human language, so that people can more readily identify the alien words from
mhm,
the human words. But the absence of that can be one clue that people um, will note.
mhm,
Um, it's sort of, you can never rely on just one thing if you want to make these words differentiable.
Yeah.
because language is complex, and there's going to be plenty of human words that won't have any of these labels, right?
Hmm.
um, Whatever unique feature we have in the Iraqi language, there's going to be a lot of things that are not present there, right? A lot of words that won't have that present. So you want to have several differences that will be notable, that people will hopefully pick up on if they're like trying to analyze it and say, okay, this is probably an Iraqi word. This is probably a a romance word, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it can reach, like, maybe there's not just phonologically, but it could be that there are certain common affixes that Iraqi has that don't appear in the future romance. Um, Different phonotactic structures. Like, I don't know, maybe we have like clusters that can't occur in romance but are close enough that people adapt to them, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think that is good.
Hmm.
That this will help me. So yeah, stronger bias toward tonal languages. Tones exist that humans cannot easily pronounce. Harm, harmonize tones. Two different fundamental frequencies. And you're saying that these secondary, they're separate openings, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like they're speaking with a tone. They're not that, like, a bird can actually in the syrinx can produce two different pitches. A lot of
Hmm.
birds can produce two different pitches, and they both come out their mouth shaped however their tongue shapes it.
Yeah.
But these creatures, it's like they have a drone, like bagpipes.
Yeah. Something like that. That like so you could have that sort of going on top of like your more articulated speech, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Okay. So let's say, let's not say that for tones. Droning. Yeah. Additional drones from the other openings.
Mhm.
But you are saying that they can control whether those are open and closed.
Yeah.
So less like bagpipes, or like, I don't know what else to say, but like a bagpipe, but if you could open and close the drones, right? Um, and select which one you were using.
Mhm.
That is interesting.
Yeah, something like that. I guess like a woodwind, something like that.
Yeah, like, I mean, most woodwind instruments are like this. They have like multiple tones, and
Hmm.
you can select the pitch by having more than one hole open. But let's not worry too much about the physics of that. We
Yeah.
don't want to turn into Artifactian's music stream, uh, which was excellent, by the way. If you missed Artifactian's music stream, he was constantly apologizing about it being too technical. I don't think it was too technical. I thought it was fascinating.
I liked all the little example tunes.
Yeah. Um, their music is going to be wild too, because they can
Yeah.
sing in ways that we require a musical instrument for. Um, Last thing, I was going to ask this, just how is their tongue flexibility? Is their tongue like meaningfully less flexible than a human tongue?
Hmm. I haven't
Because
thought about it much, but I think maybe to throw something in, it's like maybe they have more trouble reaching like the front of their mouth with their tongue.
Might not reach as far front. Okay, that's interesting. Dentals, hard,
Dental.
even alveolars, less frequent. Honestly, even the idea that we would have alveolars and dentals is um and here, so that's going to be seriously limiting on the sounds that they can produce.
Yeah,
um
maybe.
I think this may be another bias thing where they're
Hmm.
biased more towards palatals and velars, but like with practice they can get an alveolar. So um now a lot of these Romance languages, they the coronals are dental rather than alveolar. They have a t rather than a t. And if you can't hear the difference between that, I can't either. But like, um, if we're losing the th, we might have a the, we might re-evolve a th and a the, but these things would not be able to pronounce that if we're doing that. Uh, now you just came up with this. Don't feel married to any of these things if you want to change things. I think the secondary
Hmm.
openings is a really cool, unique thing. They the stiff lips is a really common thing because, as I said, that's like a particular mammal adaptation that we don't expect if they didn't evolve to suck teats, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'm sorry, there is not a way to say that in
Yeah.
a more appropriate way. Um, 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 and the secondary openings is just a cool idea that I really like. The tongue not not being as like long, it's cool. It can give me some cool limitations to work with, but like you don't need to feel married to that if you like later think, "Oh, I don't want it that way." Um
Hmm. But yeah,
Gregatron,
that's.
you want to win the jackpot? I also want to win the jackpot. Go to patreon.com/conlanger, give me money so I can just do this.
That's how that works.
No, no, but well, yes, do that. Also go to like subscribe to World Building Pasta
Yeah,
and
thank
whatever he's got for fundraising so he can just do his map making stuff. That would
you.
be
Hmm.
really great if we could do that. But yeah, so I'm thinking, so we can work on, I can why am I trying to open a new file? I need to put a table, like just mocking up a quick phonology. Well, we'll do have palatals, velars, just so we can have some variety. I'll put uvulars in here.
Yeah.
So uvulars are against your uvula. French has the uvular fricative ra, but there's also like we can have a qaw, like in Arabic.
Hmm.
Um, we can have like this is the symbol um for the palatal ga, right? We can fricative, um I'm just kind of spitballing
Yeah.
phonology. We could have something like, I think they would have more blade palatals, um the xia rather than sha, because if they're having trouble um like pushing their tongue to the front of their mouth. I think they probably have trouble with like putting their tongue up in the way you have to do to pronounce sh, a sh sound. Definitely a retroflex like a sha would be difficult for them, but a sha probably works. Uh, how about uvular fricative? Um, H and ha. These are not super commonly. Um, and why don't we insert? We can like insert. Um, to be a full-time world-building dilettante with flexible lips in a late-stage capitalist hellscape. Jake says, "Yeah, the mantra of the weekend is we are doing this for free, and the second is go to our Patreon." We can have pharyngeals. If they are more flexible in their throat than in the front, they might be more biased to have pharyngeals. It's less common. It's not super common in human languages, but Arabic has it, and we have the how do you the ha? So they might have the ha like in Arabic. That's super cool and can be useful because it also just inevitably causes some vowel coloring. You can't use it like an e is going to be it's because you're pulling your tongue so far back that you can't reach the vowels as much. I'm hearing echo, by the way. Um,
I'm not sure. I'm not getting anything on my end.
yeah. Well, it would be coming from you because I'm hearing my voice. Um,
Just turn my
but
volume down.
yeah, just turn your volume down on cans and it should be okay. Uh, hmm yeah. I heard it a little bit earlier and I was wondering what that was. Um, but yeah. So and then we can have some. Yeah, we can have yeah. So yeah, and I'll say maybe the approximates don't reach quite so far back, and we just get this funny little guy. If I can figure out how to type him correctly. Is it? Nope. There it is. The velar approximate. So if you want to pronounce this, pronounce a W, a W sound without rounding your lips.
What?
And you end up L. L.
What?
Yeah. I think they would have that. And it's not something that occurs anywhere in romance. It's probably not going to end up there because it's not super common um, for anything. But I think that's a good like start on consonants. I think so. Well, I can insert. We only got like 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
But I can quickly. So vowels. So high, mid, low, front, central, back. Now, thinking about your constraint with the tongue, this may also affect vowels because so the thing about human languages is however many vowels they have, they tend to go and spread out through the vowel space. So if you have three vowels, you almost always are going to have e, u, and a. If you have five vowels, it's usually going to add e and o. And it's only after that that you start to add like some central vowels and like the front a. However, if you're saying that they have trouble reaching like dentals and alveolars, they probably also won't be reaching all the way up here. So, Jake, I think, was saying add some central vowels. Well, not in the human language, but in this one, we may just be biased to go more for central vowels. Uh, if I can, again, I have to remember how to type these things, like the and I, maybe we'll have an there as well. I think that maybe like the furthest they could push it, the furthest they tend to push it, they don't really go with for the high front e, right?
Hmm.
But they have it e a o u. This is just sort of like what they would be biased towards. We could remove some of these. Maybe they just have a three vowel system. Maybe they have a five vowel system. Human languages tend to be biased toward five vowels, um, but we don't have to follow that.
Yeah. I feel
Um,
like if we keep it a bit restrictive, a bit narrower, it might help it stand out a bit more, maybe.
okay. I think so. The thing is, I think actually we will delete this A. This one will probably get adapted to an ah, and this one might get like adapted to an e or an e for human speakers,
Hmm.
depending on what vowels exist there. But that will be like another differentiator is that you never see any front vowels in these words. You never see any front vowels. And I can like delete. In fact, like to them, these are the front vowels. We can even push this back and make this the. Although I never really worry about the difference between the those two. Um, and we can delete um delete column. Yeah. And like in truth, we're doing sort of an approximation of human phonology with these aliens that are doing weird things, right?
Hmm.
McCain says, "What is a sound that can only be made when very drunk." Um, so we've got, yeah, we've got a sort of a good baseline. This is just a draft.
Hmm.
Um, I think in our last 6 minutes, I want to quickly say, like, and we can talk more about this later, maybe. I think I really want to I don't know how much time we'll have for this, but maybe later we'll do some more communication and do some more development on that so that
Yeah.
we can like showcase it later in collaboration and you can actually use it for your writing.
Hmm.
Um, but like, do you have any very quick psychological points on these
Um,
guys?
something I might sort of go back to a previous point is well, we had this idea with the way the genders and noun cases are going to develop with our language. So I have a feeling like maybe this alien species, they just kind of don't really get gender just because their like reproductive biology is so different. So maybe, when they have more influence, that might like contribute to like those gender
Yeah.
cases kind of dying away in
Yeah.
our main language.
Okay, so like if we still have masculine, feminine
Hmm.
in this future, maybe that becomes even more arbitrary
Yeah.
for them because like the thing about any noun class system is it has a semantic core, and then they will tend to um they'll tend to like spread out from there into more arbitrary things.
Hmm.
In the Romance languages, we have a masculine and feminine category. The semantic core is masculine is for human men, right? Human males.
Hmm.
Feminine is for human females, um, or human men and women. And then sometimes it gets applied to animals semantically. Sometimes animals just get a gender uh, and the arbitrarily for the word.
Hmm.
There are a few exceptions, like persona. Persona is always feminine. Ser humano is always masculine. There's things like that, but generally we have that semantic core. If those things survive the nuclear war, those categories survive the nuclear war, or maybe we have a new, I wouldn't say neuter, but like epicene, um, one or common gender with it or something like that, maybe the connections are not as understood by these guys, and they only see the arbitrary agreement, and that leads to it like dying out or maybe reconfiguring to mean something else.
Hmm.
So that's something we can think about. One thing I will mention is like the alternating generations
Yeah.
cause uh I and you can flesh this out, will cause weird family structures.
Yeah. This is sort
Um
of something I want to incorporate in the story a lot. Is the way they're like their society is very strongly tied to place because like once they have their offspring that are essentially plants in the soil, they can't really move those. So
yeah,
they're very strongly sedentary as a society.
yeah. And it's going to be very weird. Like I may one thing I may develop for this language, even though it's like a second, it's loan words to a naming language. I don't
Yeah.
really need to do a lot, but one system I think I might build out is a whole suite of kinship terms, because their kinship terms are going to be totally weird.
Yeah,
Because
because it all.
the people who are speakers, their parents are sessile tree thingies,
Yeah.
and then their grandparents are people they can talk to. That
Hmm.
distinction is going to be really important to them, I think.
And there might be something we work with is like if the sort of tree ones are the ones that actually engage in like sexual reproduction, then
Oh,
there's
okay.
like the way they relate to other groups. They have like a whole system for negotiating like how they like pollinate trees with each other, which then
Okay.
influences their family dynamic.
Okay. So that makes me think that okay, they reproduce asexually.
Sort of. It's a common thing in plants where like from the trees to the like running around people is essentially asexual, or no, the other way around. It's from the people to the trees is asexual, and then from
There's sexual reproduction,
the
but
trees
like,
reproduce sexually, the people don't. I'm not sure
and
why.
then the tree is like an object
Yeah, it's
almost. Like
not
I mean, it's
sentient.
culturally important, but it's not a person.
Yeah.
So they're negotiating between families, like which trees get pollinated with which,
Yeah.
and then those trees produce offspring that are part of the family. They know which trees are theirs.
Mhm.
Um, okay, that that makes a lot of sense. That's where we're going to have to leave it, because we're
Yeah.
going to have to throw to the next people, which I believe it
It's
should.
architecture, I think.
Um, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Neolithic architecture with Hannah and Biblioridine.
Okay, yes, and that's gonna be super fun, I'm
Mhm.
sure. I can't be there because I gotta like take my daughters out to their usual weekend places, but I'll see if I can watch it later. So yeah, bye. Okay. You can subscribe to me here, Con Langery, if you want to see more Con Langery stuff. Um, I do tongues and runes at this time. Next week, I'm going to go back to my draconic, and I'm going to make incantations. I've done them for D&D. I'm going to do them for Draw Steel, which is going to be a different project. I'm going to do pick one of the classes from Draw Steel and do incantations for their spells. And Nikolai,
Mhm.
uh, just
I've
quickly,
yeah, World Building Pasta. It's a blog. You can look it up. I have YouTube now. I have a Patreon. All the
yeah.
usual things.
And you have one good, really good video up, and I'm sure there's more coming. So
Yeah.
go subscribe to World Building Pasta. And
All right.
yes, thank you for watching, and happy conlaying. Wait.